Now, as President Trump pointed out last night, and I believe deeply, we are headed into a new era that I think will make the world a safer place. We have a president who yesterday, President Trump made clear in his inaugural speech that one of the primary goals of American foreign policies is the promotion of peace. Of course, peace through strength, peace and always without abandoning our values. But I think it's extraordinary that it's something that needs to be said and hasn't been said enough in recent memory. And we look forward to being a key part of helping the president achieve his agenda that he has a clear mandate to keep.
President Trump taking questions from reporters while signing a number of executive orders last night, and there's new reaction to the ceasefire agreement between Israel and Hamas. Trey Yingst has more from Tel Aviv.
President Trump made many headlines on foreign policy, including new insights about that ceasefire between Israel and Hamas.
How confident are you, Mr. President, that you can keep the ceasefire in Gaza and conclude the 3 phases of this deal?
I'm not confident. That's not our war, it's their war, but I'm not confident, but I think they're very weakened on the other side.
There is a catastrophic level of destruction to Gaza. The World Bank estimates more than $18 billion worth of damage to the enclave.
The first lawsuit to challenge billionaire Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency was filed in federal court Monday, within hours after President Trump was sworn into office. Fox News legal analyst Greg Jarrett.
Well, first of all, this is a premature lawsuit. It was actually filed before Trump, as you saw there, signed the executive order creating DOGE. And it's basically bureaucrats who object to cutting out wasteful spending. This is the most bloated bureaucracy in world history. And bureaucrats don't want to lose their jobs, so they want to keep the government waste in there because it offers them full employment. So they're suing based on a 53-year-old law that says, well, if it's an advisory committee to the government, it has to be fully transparent and it must be balanced. You have to have bureaucrats on the advisory committee, which is utter nonsense.
A religious freedom law group is asking the U.S. District Court of Arizona to uphold the right of a school board president to recite scripture during meetings.
Aaron Smith of the Liberty Council is helping defend Heather Rooks' right to quote Bible verses during meetings. She argues that Rooks has the constitutional right to do so.
She is not asking any of the audience members to participate. In fact, this isn't something that audience members really can participate in. She is just quoting scripture, a short passage, usually, 1 to 2 verses.
Smith says the trouble began when the Freedom from Religion Foundation got wind of it and complained.
The school board's legal counsel was the one that had instructed the board that they weren't to quote scripture in light of these unfounded threats by the Freedom from Religion Foundation.
Smith is hopeful that the judge comes to the right conclusion, as a judge did with football coach Joseph Kennedy, who prayed silently on the field following games in Bremerton, Washington. I'm Bob Kellogg.
More news available online at afn.net and download the AFN mobile app. I'm Rusty Pugh.
Streaming.afa.net has now become AFA Stream, and you can find it at stream.afa.net. You see, we removed the letters ing. Our experts have determined that eliminating those 3 keystrokes, multiplied over hundreds of thousands of AFA Stream visits, could reduce the national debt and maybe increase the gross domestic product. AFA Stream, formerly streaming.afa.net. Improvements to the economy are purely theoretical.
Welcome to Today's Issues. Join us for the next hour as we offer a Christian response to the issues of the day. Here's your host, Ed Vitagliano.
And welcome, everyone, to Today's Issues. Ed Vitagliano sitting in for Tim Wildman today. I am joined in studio by Fred Jackson. Good morning, Fred.
Good morning, Ed.
And Chris Woodward, our reporter of note this morning. Good morning to you, Chris.
Thank you very much.
Well, it's day 2 of the Trump administration. We are going to get to the wealth of happenings, a little bit of happiness mixed in there too. So much going on in the first 24 hours or so, less than 24 hours technically. But we do have some weather again
Yes.
to report on. This has just been a kind of a tough couple of months with wildfires and winter storms. What's hurricanes not too long ago?
Yeah. There is a season for everything, and 'tis the season for severe weather, especially in the deep south here. A winter storm known as Enzo is bringing rare snow and ice to Gulf and southeast coasts. I'm looking at a map from the Weather Channel. I'll post this on our Today's Issues Facebook page. But imagine a map of the southeastern U.S. Plus Texas. And you're looking at a big sheet of blue from Houston all the way along the Gulf Coast, clear on over into like Panama City, on up into Georgia. Even some parts of South and North Carolina are impacted by this.
Now, by the way, which Gulf are you talking about?
The Gulf of America. Thank you.
Gulf of America.
The newly named Gulf of America. I did see somebody yesterday saying, why can't we call it Gulf of Mississippi? But anyway, the Gulf Coast states here are impacted. I mean, it's bitterly cold here where we are in northeast Mississippi, but we're not getting anything to the level of these poor Americans down here in these places that I just mentioned here. I do have some audio. This is obviously a huge weather story. Fox has Janice Dean, their chief meteorologist, on air every once in a while talking about this. I have it here. It is clip 1.
We have a snowstorm, a blizzard underway for areas that have never experienced this type of weather across Texas and Louisiana. We have a blizzard warning for Lake Charles, Louisiana. This is something that you would typically see across the Northeast. Heavy snow in the forecast for places like Corpus Christi, Houston, Texas, New Orleans. Blizzard warning, unprecedented for this area. And the temperatures are going to remain cold. So if you've got 5 to 8 inches of snow on the ground with areas that do not have snow removal equipment and the possibility for power outages, this is going to be a life-threatening situation. 5 to 8 inches for coastal Louisiana. This is the snowstorm of a lifetime for them.
You know, Fred, in our story meeting this morning, so most of our listeners know, we mentioned that we do meet before the show to discuss what stories we're going to cover and what we're going to try to do in terms of sound and so on and so forth. I was shocked that this was a real story because I had seen someone post a map. I think it was on Facebook or maybe X, but I think it was Facebook. And there's so much baloney that is posted on social media. I thought people were just making a joke because I saw this map with this blue strip across the Gulf, the far south of the Gulf states. And I thought that they're just kind of making fun of the fact that, like here, where Northeast Mississippi, where our flagship station, our headquarters is located for American Family Radio, we've had a couple of days where the high has been below freezing. I thought they were just joking around. You guys said we need to cover this story. And I said, wait, that was real? This is a potential disaster for these areas that are going to be hit.
Oh, absolutely. We were talking to our news anchor who's based in Texas, Robert Thornton, this morning. He has a buddy down in Galveston. There is snow on the beach in Galveston, Texas. And I just got off the phone with my daughter who lives in the Orange Beach area of Alabama.
Yeah.
She said, Dad's snowing. It's snowing there. And, I asked how they're getting ready for it. And, they happen to have a shovel from where they used to live in South Carolina, but they couldn't find any salt. And and you may say, particularly those in the north, what do you mean you can't find any salt?
Right.
It's everywhere. Well, no, it's not, especially when you're talking about that far south. This is going to be the big problem, and Janice Dean kind of alluded to that in her report on Fox. You have no snow removal equipment in Lake Charles, Louisiana.
Right.
Because they don't get snow.
Yes.
And if they don't have snow removal and you don't have salt, and Janice Dean was saying it's going to stay cold even after the system moves along. So you're going to have people trying to drive over the 3 to 5 inches of snow that's going to be on the ground. That's going to turn to ice. It's going to stay cold. It's going to be a skating rink. You stop and think about I-10.
Right.
Big interstate across the bottom there that stretches from Texas and all the way over to Florida. If that has packed down ice on it and then you've got some other major roads through the system. So the best thing you can do, folks, they've kind of known this is coming. I'm assuming schools have been canceled for them.
Oh, it's going to shut everything down.
Yeah. Stay home.
Yeah.
Just stay home.
How many days is this supposed to last? Any idea in terms of the cold weather?
Well,
Several.
Several. The snow should move on by this evening, especially when we're talking about Louisiana, Texas, and parts of Alabama. But if it stays cold in behind, like we are north of all of this, in our home base here in Tupelo, it is going down to single digits here tonight.
Yes.
And then it starts a warm-up.
Yeah.
Highs up into the high 30s. So that's a warm-up compared to what we're getting. So I think within 48 hours, it'll start to warm up again. But for now, folks, just stay home.
Well, and another big problem, I don't know how cold it's going to get and stay in this Gulf region. But when I moved to Mississippi, I realized that when you build homes, you don't build them like you do up in New England, where I'm from, where your pipes coming into your house, your water pipes, are 2 feet down or whatever. Here, it doesn't get the freezing temperatures don't linger down here in the South, so you don't have to have your pipes down quite so deep.
Yeah.
But you get to Louisiana, southern Louisiana, southern Mississippi, Alabama, some of these places where they hardly ever get these kind of freezing temperatures, maybe a lot of busted pipes, too.
Well, yeah, the houses in this part of the world are built on slabs.
Yeah.
Very few homes have basements like up north. And I mentioned, talking to my daughter, I said, leave your taps running tonight. That is a way, at least if the water keeps running, that you can avoid what can be a disaster when pipes start to break.
Oh, yeah. And you don't find out oftentimes until it starts to warm up.
Yes.
Because they are frozen and stay frozen. I always tell people, listen, they say, well, you waste water. Well, just you don't want to know how much water you'll waste if you have a busted pipe.
Yes.
So anyway, so we have had some crazy weather.
Yes.
And I saw somebody posted a kind of a funny meme on social media and was talking about the cold weather we had here and then the cold weather coming to the South, the deep South. And they said that Donald Trump got rid of global warming in his first day in office. So climate change and global warming, not really an issue here in the U.S.
I was curious because we always bring it up when she's on the show. As far as I know, she's not on the show today. But while you guys were discussing what our fellow Americans down south are experiencing today, I looked up the weather in Minneapolis today. It is currently 10 below in Minneapolis, where Jan Markell and others.
That's the other side of the equation. Yeah. Those folks are going, well, you poor people down in the South.
Jan's probably saying, bless your heart.
Yes. So anyway, folks, keep the people in the southern deep South in your prayers. More weather-related struggles coming for the people of the U.S. So. All right, we want to welcome to our program someone who's been on this program before and many of the other shows we have on American Family Radio, Robert Gagnon, who's a visiting scholar at Wesley Biblical Seminary. Good morning to you, Robert.
Good morning, Ed.
Hey, saw an article that you had written. Let's see, this was for the Federalist, I think. We are in the process of digging out from kind of the changes that have occurred between the Biden administration and the Trump administration. Later on in this program, we're going to be talking about pardons of J6ers and others. But just before he left office, President Biden issued, I don't know if it'll wind up being more pardons than any other president in history, but it'll be pretty close. But he also commuted some sentences, and you wrote for the Federalist, and here's the title of the article, "Here are the 37 brutal murderers Joe Biden let off death row." And this is kind of shocking And it kind of gets lost in all that's happened over the last week, and especially the last few days. What's this article about?
Well, it's taking a look at the individuals whose death sentences he commuted, and it's showing how heinous the offenses are that they committed. The offenses for many involved multiple murders with very gruesome circumstances involved in that murder. It also involved some persons who were in prison already and murdered other inmates. So it raises also the question of how you control a violent population if there's nothing left to do to them other than a death sentence. Some of these also include the killing of officers, and some of them are just single murderers whose kind of murder that they committed are also, again, very extreme. And in very many of the cases, there was also a confession involved. So what I ask people to think about is the kind of moral outrage that they would feel at the commutation of such sentences, and whether or not from the standpoint of being a Christian, that's a good thing and reflective of God's judgment.
So the kinds of people we are talking about now, it's a real struggle, I'll admit, to get into the minds of people on the left sometimes who are so callous, Robert, about killing unborn babies. They have absolutely no problem from a moral perspective or a religious perspective, many of them, ending the life of an unborn child. But when it comes to people who, and I'm not even going to the gory details, but who assaulted girls, little girls, and murdered them in, as you said, heinous, gruesome fashion. What is the thinking? What is the explanation from the people on the left for commuting a sentence and getting these people off death row? I'm not, obviously you're not defending it. The purpose of the article is to indicate moral outrage over this. What is their explanation for this, generally speaking?
Well, I think for Biden and for many Christians, including Catholics since 2018, I think it was, had their catechism changed to reject all capital sentencing as a violation of the dignity of the human being. And that's, many Christians, evangelicals as well, hold that kind of viewpoint. Really, that they say it's an assault on being made in the image of God to take the life of another human being who was also made in that image. So that's their motivation, and they would appeal to Jesus' teaching, for example, in the Sermon on the Mount about turning the other cheek and loving your enemy as a basis for that. But in my view, as a New Testament scholar, that is a misreading of Scripture. It's certainly not something that Jesus would have supported. I do think that there is a difference in Jesus' view on capital sentencing. There's a bit of a change that he undertakes, but not a complete rejection of capital sentencing. I don't know if that would be of interest or not to discuss.
Well, I'll say this, and then I'll turn this. Fred and Chris may have some questions for you. I mean, there is a difference, right, between the response of, in terms of Jesus's teaching, a distinction between how individuals are to respond as Christians to evil and wrongdoing, and how the state should respond. And I'm thinking in terms of the Apostle Paul in Romans 13, saying that the government bears the sword for a reason. The sword very easily could be seen there as the power of life and death. Do you agree with that distinction between the individual and the government? Because if you follow that Sermon on the Mount logic, then why should the government punish people at all? Why doesn't the government just forgive individuals for their crimes and not even put them in prison? I don't know. Am I going too far on that?
No, I think you're exactly right on that. When Jesus is talking about turning the other cheek, he obviously doesn't mean that the state should turn the other cheek when its citizens are being robbed or murdered and so forth. We expect the state to practice judgment, to implement. In fact, as you noted from Paul in Romans 13:4, the state has the right to bear the sword. Makaira. When you look at that Greek word in other texts, in Paul and in Acts, you find out that it happens to be used for capital sentencing. So that's clearly Paul's view that capital sentencing is allowed. And in fact, when he talks about the right of the state to bear the sword in Romans 13:4, the next subject of discussion is about loving your neighbor as yourself as sort of the central love command defining the Christian life. But he's able to say that in connection with the state's right to bear the sword and not see any contradiction at all. Because when he's talking about the Christian's obligation to love one's neighbor, he does not mean that to say that the state does not have the right to exert capital sentencing. And Jesus, when he talks about the sixth commandment, that you shall not murder, in Matthew 5, in the series of what we call six antitheses, you used to be able to get away with the following, and now I tell you no longer. He does deal with the case of capital sentence. He does deal with the situation, you shall not murder, in the Decalogue commandment. But he doesn't retract it. He simply extends God's judgment in the kingdom of God to you if you're even angry without repentance against your neighbor. And so it's somewhat similar to this intensification of the biblical ethic. For example, in the same text in Matthew 5, he talks about you shall not commit adultery, and then extends and deepens, intensifies God's demand to include not only the outward act of adultery, but adultery of the heart. So we don't see Jesus, when he's talking about you shall not murder, rejecting that because it's a capital sentencing kind of thing for the state, but rather affirming that command.
Yeah.
So you're right. I don't think that anybody within Scripture rejects capital sentencing for the state. Really, what they're adopting is the principle that's put forward in Genesis 9:6, right after the flood, to Noah, where the text says that the human who sheds blood, the one who sheds blood, the blood of a human, by the human, his blood will be shed. For in the image of God, God made the human. And the point of that is to say that if you do something so bad as to take the life of another made in the image of God, then you're going to lose your own life because you have committed the ultimate offense. And the only appropriate penalty for that is to lose your life. Otherwise, you cheapen the life that is made in God's image. So it's actually the reverse of how people normally speak about the imago Dei, or the image bearing of the human. That principle does not reject capital sentencing, but rather, according to Genesis 9, it affirms it. I think the one thing that Jesus does is different when you look at the woman caught in adultery in John 8, is that Jesus limits the death penalty to cases of murder, first-degree murder. That's different from the law of Moses. He does not advocate that the woman who committed adultery be stoned. He rejects that. But that's not a rejection of capital sentencing completely. It's actually a return to the startup of creation in Genesis 9 after the flood, the restart. And that's very typical of what we see about Jesus. For example, in sexual ethics, going back to the Genesis creation text in chapters 1 and 2, in order to deepen or intensify God's demand for sexual purity. one other partner for life and rejecting the right of men to have multiple partners concurrently or serially. So I think that's the change that Jesus makes. So no capital sentencing for non-murder cases, non-homicide cases, but not a rejection of it for homicide cases.
Well, Robert, this has been very helpful. This has been a great discussion. By the way, I think, Chris, you said you have shared Robert's article from the Federalist on our Facebook page.
I did, yes.
All right, so folks, you can check that out there and get some insight into the commutation of the sentences here. Robert, how can folks maybe get and see more of what you've written? You've written quite a bit on the subject of human sexuality, homosexuality, gender confusion, those kinds of things. You're basically you're a rock star for biblical exegesis when it comes to these issues. Where can folks find either those kinds of writings or others that you may have posted?
Well, I have a lot of articles online on my site, www.robgagnon.net. However, that site has not been updated in years. I do need to redo that. People can also see a lot of my contributions and where to find them. They just join me on Facebook or X or Twitter. Yeah, that's a good way of locating the materials.
Yeah, I follow, by the way, folks, I follow Robert Gagnon on X. Always has some fascinating and insightful things to say. Robert, thank you so much for being on with us again today, and God bless your work. You are a very courageous man. I mean, because you say what you believe the Scriptures teach, and you don't back down from that, and sometimes that's in short supply in our society. So thank you for your courage and your faithfulness to the Scriptures.
Well, thank you so much, Ed, and also for you and the good work being done at AFA.
All right. Thank you, Robert.
Blessings. Bye now.
That's Dr. Robert Gagnon. He's a visiting scholar at Wesley Biblical Seminary. Fred, one time we had him come we have some of his material at our stream.afa.net, our streaming platform. And I picked him up from the airport and took him out to dinner on behalf of AFA and just picked his brain for the entire time. He's a fascinating, brilliant individual.
Yeah, great thinker.
Great thinker. All right, we will take a short break here. You're listening to Today's Issues on the American Family Radio Network. More great stuff happening. If you're a fan of Donald Trump, I think probably the majority of our listeners are. But what a busy day he had yesterday, and that busyness is going to continue. Chris is going to let us know what has been happening over the roughly 24 hours since he was inaugurated. All right, we will be back in a few minutes. Hope you join us.
It's my turn.
Here is your host for My Turn, Don Wildman.
Kenneth Lassiter was a cop. He was an Alabama State Trooper. Lassiter took his job serious. He was helpful to people, but he also did his duty and wrote a ticket when it was deemed necessary. On February the 12th, 1973, Lassiter was patrolling a highway near Montgomery when he came up on the scene of an accident. A man had lost control of his pickup truck and was bleeding to death with a severed artery. Lassiter, trained in first aid, managed to stop the bleeding and call for an ambulance. The injured man, Kenneth Ray Barton, was taken to a hospital and recovered. Lassiter eventually charged Barton with drunk driving. Like we said, he helped people, but he also did his duty. When the case got to court, the judge reduced the drunk driving charge to one of reckless driving. This reduction of sentence allowed Barton to keep his driver's license. I'm sure that the judge thought he was doing the right thing. It's a hard punishment to require a person to give up his driver's license, and surely Barton had learned his lesson from the previous experience. After all, any reasonable person who nearly kills himself while driving drunk surely wouldn't make the same mistake again. Nearly 14 months later, Trooper Lassiter had stopped another car very near the place where he had saved Barton's life. Lassiter wrote the motorist a warning ticket and had started back to his car. A battered old pickup coming down the road swerved and headed straight toward him. The trooper saw the pickup coming and started to run, but it was too late. He was hit and killed before he could get out of the way. So, nearly the very spot where he had saved one man's life only 14 months earlier, Trooper Lassiter died while doing his duty. The pickup which hit Lassiter didn't stop to help him. The driver just kept going. It could have been that the driver was drunk. Well, the next day a man turned himself over to the sheriff's office. He told authorities that he had been out drinking the night before. He said he could not remember driving home or who was at the wheel of the truck. Headlines in a newspaper, which had a story telling of the incident, read like this: Trooper killed by man whose life he once saved. You see, the man who turned himself in was Kenneth Ray Barton. Here's a personal note to all judges. The next time a person is brought before you on a drunk driving charge, be lenient. Reduce his sentence to reckless driving and let him keep his license. We all know that they've learned their lesson and won't drive again while drunk, don't we? Kenneth Ray Barton is proof of that. So be lenient, Mr. Judge. Be lenient.
This has been My Turn with Don Wildman, a production of the American Family Association.
What no eye has seen, what no ear has heard, and what no human mind has conceived, the things God has prepared for those who love Him. 1 Corinthians 2:9.
American Family Radio. This is today's issues. Email your comments to comments@afr.net. Past broadcasts of today's issues are available for listening and viewing in the archive at afr.net. Now, back to more of today's issues.
And welcome back. Ed Vitagliano sitting in for Tim Wildman. Today, I'm joined in studio by Fred Jackson and Chris Woodward. Well, folks, you've been hearing on AFR over the last week and, 3 or 4 days, probably the last 10 days. It is time for our AFR campaign with preborn. I didn't know this, but abortion is the leading cause of death in the U.S. and the world, according to preborn. And so in the midst of such a tragedy, preborn says we can do something about it, and AFR agrees. And so we're asking you to partner with us to help moms choose life. Our goal is to save 4,500 babies before the end of this week, 4,500 babies. And the way preborn has set out to try to save these lives is that through donations like the ones we are asking our listeners to make, they are able to give free ultrasounds to women who are considering getting an abortion. And over the past 18 years, preborn partner clinics have counseled over 500,000 women who have been considering abortion, and more than 300,000 babies' lives have been saved over that time. That's incredible. And more than 80,000 women have surrendered their lives to Christ. And the fact is that if you allow a woman to see her baby on ultrasound and hear the baby's heartbeat, a baby's chance at life is doubled. These ultrasounds have a tremendous impact on the mom. Many of these young women have been fed a lie about how this is just a blob of tissue. This is nothing more than like having your appendix removed. They see that ultrasound and see that baby and hear that heartbeat. The chances of them going through with the abortion is lessened, and the possibility of that baby surviving is doubled. So this is what we're asking you to do. Your gift of $28 provides one woman seeking an abortion a free ultrasound. And that gives that mom the opportunity to choose life for her baby. If you give $140, that provides 5 free ultrasound sessions, etc. So maybe you can sponsor 5 ultrasounds. So here's the number to call. Any donation, folks, would be welcome to Preborn, I'm sure. You can give $10. That's fine. Somebody else gives $10. Somebody else gives $10. That's one free ultrasound. Here's the number to call. 877-616-2396. That's 877-616-2396. You can donate online at afr.net. You will see the information right there, dead center, when you go to afr.net. You can click through and give that way. But if you want to call, the number is 877-616-2396. Again, this is the annual campaign with American Family Radio and Preborn. $28 provides one woman seeking an abortion a free ultrasound. We hope you will consider giving. All right, Chris, let's go back to the news.
Well, we need to go over several things involving President Trump. I'm going to have to remind myself to stop saying President-elect Trump. He took the oath of office yesterday. He is now officially President Donald John Trump. And one of the things that we need to take a minute to acknowledge and discuss here is an event today at 3 p.m. Central. President Trump is going to deliver remarks at 3 p.m. Central today and deliver what the White House has been calling or referring to as a massive infrastructure announcement. Details are few. I have been Googling since the beginning of the show, Trump infrastructure, what's Trump announcing today. I cannot find details. But the administration has been saying all morning that they are making a big infrastructure announcement. I actually have a soundbite here from Caroline Leavitt. She's someone we're going to hear and talk about a lot for the next few years, perhaps. That's because Caroline Leavitt is the new White House press secretary. Whether or not she defers people to agencies and circles back, we'll find out. But Caroline Leavitt was on Fox this morning. And in this soundbite I'm about to play, she begins by talking about her new role, but she says in the middle towards the end of the clip that Trump is going to speak today, and we're going to hear from our new president. So let's do clip 12.
With me, but my binder is in my brain because I know President Trump's policies and we have truth on our side at this White House, but I can confirm that the American people won't be hearing from me today. They'll be hearing from the leader of the free world once again. President Trump will be speaking to the press later this afternoon at the White House, and we will have a big infrastructure announcement. This man is already doing more in less than 24 hours than his predecessor did in 4 years. Yesterday was a historic day for President Trump. He signed 42 executive orders, memorandums, and proclamations. He took more than 200 executive actions, on top of giving 3 speeches throughout the day and then attending 3 balls late into the early hours of the morning this morning. And he's already off to work again. And so the American people have a leader who is delivering on the promises he made to them. President.
All right, so a big infrastructure announcement. Fred, I got to say, is for as much as the Democrats have talked about infrastructure over the years, the money they spend and then get nothing done. I'm talking about billions spent to try to increase the number of charging stations across the country. And then after a couple of years and billions of dollars set aside, the 6 or 7 charging stations. I mean, just absurd levels of inactivity and incompetence on the part of the Biden administration. Donald Trump, we've said this, Tim is the one who kind of coined this phrase, at least as far as I know, in terms of my very small circle of people that I know. He said the man is a force of nature, and he is not going to be taking naps and falling asleep during important meetings with world advisors and world leaders. He's going to get stuff done.
That is right. And he will not mislead the American public. You remember the Inflation Reduction Act?
Oh, my goodness.
Which had nothing to do with reducing inflation.
It was about the Green New Deal.
Yes, it was. It was all about the climate change agenda of the far left. I'm very curious. Caroline Leavitt, who you just heard there, she's a little bit coy about it. She didn't want to get ahead of the president, as she said. So we're all kind of wondering if it's going to be maybe a partnership with the private sector. Chris, you had an interesting theory.
Yes.
About involving Mr. Bezos.
What is that theory, Chris?
Well, a couple of years during his first term, one of the things that Trump was pushing for in the way of an infrastructure deal was to have Amazon and some other big tech companies that we're all starting to use more and more actually pitch in and be involved in public-private partnerships to build things like roads and bridges, make repairs. So I was curious as to whether or not that may be what we're talking about, because interestingly enough, among the hundreds of people there yesterday for the oath of office, standing in that crowd with various legislators were billionaires, including Jeff Bezos,
right,
Tim Cook of Apple, and the current guy that heads up Google or Alphabet, whatever I'm supposed to call it. And I just found it very interesting.
Mark Zuckerberg was
Mark
there,
Zuckerberg
too.
was there as well. So I found it very interesting that big-name billionaires that were there.
Yeah.
And
Are you talking
I
about
have
Sundar Pichai?
that guy.
Pichai? Yeah.
I didn't want to Mississippiize his name.
You didn't
by
want to do what I just did. Yeah, so
Yeah, Trump is going to deputize the oligarchy.
Yeah.
yes, this is what
gonna
Bernie
be a monopoly.
Sanders and some of these others on the left. Rachel Maddow went nuts over the fact that there were billionaires there. Listen, I don't have a problem with billionaires. I have a problem with billionaires who spend their money in an attempt to undermine our republic.
Oh, you're
Okay,
talking
like
about George Soros.
George Soros,
who was
and-
just given the Medal of Honor by Biden.
Yes. Now, listen, I was also upset with Mark Zuckerberg, and I kind of agree with what Abraham Hamilton III said. He said, I don't trust Mark Zuckerberg. I'm taking kind of a wait and see. I have a wait and see attitude towards Mark Zuckerberg because his Zuckerbucks during the 2020 election, many people could argue, was instrumental in pushing votes towards Joe Biden.
Yes.
I'm not sure it was necessarily in an illegal fashion, but so I don't have a problem with billionaires as long as they support the ideals, the founders' ideals about our country.
Yes.
So, but people like Rachel Maddow, AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Bernie Sanders said he was concerned. Joe Biden, in one of his final speeches, talked about the oligarchy and said that they were a threat to democracy. Everyone's a threat to democracy to the left, except the people on the left who are actually a threat to democracy.
Yeah. Well, when Zuckerberg was doing, as you just outlined, Joe Biden didn't have a problem with Zuckerberg spending money that way.
That wasn't an oligarchy then, was it?
No, it wasn't. As long as these billionaires are supporting the left-wing agenda, Biden and company don't have a problem with that.
Yeah, you know, the hypocrisy on the left, and admittedly, conservatives can be hypocrites too, but the hypocrisy on the left, when the Biden administration was trying to get the social media platforms run by these billionaires to do its bidding, to crack down on contrary opinions on COVID, on the Hunter Biden laptop, on all these kinds of things. They didn't mind the billionaires then. They didn't mind social media. Now they're squawking because at the inauguration, President Trump has some of these billionaires standing. They had a front row seat. There's no doubt about that. And for the people listening, I understand the average person is not going to get invited to those kinds of things. But these are individuals, Elon Musk, haven't mentioned him. These are individuals who have accomplished things in the past and could help the government in a private-public partnership maybe get some things done. I'm willing to take a wait-and-see attitude on that as well.
Well, I think, too, the reason you saw these billionaires, these, the social media types, Elon Musk is involved with so many different things. I think it's part of a revolution of sorts that's going on in this country right now, particularly amongst those kinds of individuals. They see that the country is in a different mood.
Yeah.
It is because of Joe Biden.
Right.
You know, our sovereign God, I think, had to allow us to see a manifestation of the far left agenda.
Yes.
We all have seen that over the last 4 years. We saw an administration willing to literally lock up the people they don't like.
Yes.
Who have a point of view they don't like.
And your political opponent to keep them from running.
Yes. So these guys saw that. And that is why the LA Times, was the LA Times owner there yesterday too? I'm not sure. Remember, his paper refused for the first time to endorse a candidate.
Right.
Likewise, the Washington Post, Bezos we're talking about, refused to endorse a candidate. There is a revolution of thinking amongst the entrepreneurs of this country. I'm not saying they've all turned conservative in their political views.
And certainly not on their social views.
Oh, no. However, they are looking at the country where it is right now. The election gave us a very clear picture that there is a realization that this country, the vast majority of people, do not want this country moving further to the left.
Right.
They want a pendulum swing back to something where the people are still in control. This is what Donald Trump represents. He's a billionaire too.
Right.
You know, but he is a guy, he's not taking a salary. He didn't take a salary in the first term. He's not taking a salary this time. I really do believe Donald Trump wants to make America great again.
Yeah.
It's not just a phrase.
Right.
I really do believe that's what he wants. That's why I'm really curious to see what this announcement's about. I've got a feeling, I may be proven wrong, that it's going to be a partnership perhaps with the private sector to do the things that need to be done. Build bridges, whatever the case may be. So I'm really curious. That'll be at 3 o'clock our time this afternoon.
Yes. Biden bragged about how I got infrastructure done. And a politician bragging about getting infrastructure done is like a parent saying, I feed my kids. You should do that.
Right.
But Trump was really trying to get something done. He never did his first time in office. This would be something that would kind of one-up Joe Biden. And for people that just need a basic definition of infrastructure, we're talking about the basic physical or organizational structures and facilities, buildings, roads, power supplies, things like that.
Yeah, I would even say access to the internet, in rural areas.
Starlink.
Yeah, those kind of things. So, by the way, I was a little bit surprised that the president, I know this is Elon Musk's his prodding, the president in his speech yesterday promising to put men on Mars.
Yes.
To land on Mars, which it seems to me to be a profoundly complex undertaking. I have no idea how much it would cost. I'm not sure that's the best idea at this point in time when people are having a hard time making ends meet. On the other hand, this is the way people like Elon Musk create incredible drive forward incredible technological advances. A lot of the advances we had technologically in our country came from the space program,
right?
Yes.
In the 60s.
Yeah.
And
Well,
70s.
did you see Elon Musk did a little dance
Yes.
when Trump mentioned that yesterday?
Yeah.
I mean, he's Elon Musk is this great thinker.
Yeah.
He is. Yes, he's got lots of money.
Yeah.
And he can take his thinking beyond concepts into reality. But I think we're in for a very exciting time over the next 4 years.
Yeah.
It could be. It could be, since we don't know and I can't find confirmation.
Let's speculate.
It could be something in the way of Panama Canal or Greenland, because we heard a lot about those things leading up to yesterday's events, and he actually mentioned the Panama Canal in his Inauguration Day speech, where he said, quote, we're taking it back.
Yes.
We'll see.
And in my opinion, he implied, he didn't come right out and say, he implied something about Greenland when he was talking about, I mentioned this yesterday, manifest destiny and raising our flag over additional lands. I just thought, is he hinting at a deal with Greenland?
Yeah. Oh, it's going to be our 51st state.
And let me go back to something you said, Fred, about the fact that the country got to see firsthand what the left's list of initiatives and what the left's view of what the country should look like. When we talk about and think back about the 2020 election, I know I'm risking opening up a can of worms here, okay? So many people upset in conservative circles about how that played out. The election was stolen. And I'm not saying yes or no on that. The point I'm making is that if you believe that God has, if God is involved in the affairs of men, to paraphrase, I don't know, maybe Ben Franklin or Thomas, maybe that was Thomas Jefferson, that God is involved in the affairs of men, then could it be that God allowed it, whatever happened, he allowed it to happen so that the country would come face to face with what Marxism does?
Yes.
And in terms of open borders, skyrocketing crime, inflation, all those things, that list of horrors that we endured over the last 4 years, God was saying, you want it? This is what it looks like.
Yes.
You sure you want it? And that could be part of God's mercy on America.
I remember over the last 4 years, Donald Trump, on a number of occasions, he was sitting in that courtroom in New York for day after day on that silly charge brought against him by the New York Democrats there. You know, he said, he kept reminding people, it's not really about me, folks.
Yeah.
This is what they want to do to you.
Yes.
This is what they want. What you're seeing happening to me is what they want to do to you.
Yes.
And I honestly believe if Joe Biden was allowed to have another term, or Kamala Harris, if they were allowed to have another Democrat-run term, I believe that ministries like the American Family Association, tax-exempt status, gone.
Right.
You got a
radio network gone.
Yes. You got a preacher who goes into his pulpit and says abortion is a crime, it's a sin, that you've got school board. It's like the school board out there in Chino Hills, California, who stood up against the governor there.
Yeah.
What did the governor do? We're going to shut you guys down.
You're talking about John MacArthur?
Yeah. John, no, this is a different
Okay.
This is a different case. The pastor at Chino Hills, Calvary
Hibbs.
Chapel, Jack
Okay.
Hibbs. You know, this is the kind of thing, if they had another term, folks, what you saw in the first term of Joe Biden would be 10 times worse.
Yeah, the Republic would have been lost.
That's right.
I am 10 years ago, I would have said that's hyperbole. But after 8 years of Obama and 4 years of Biden, and whoever was pulling the strings on Biden.
Yeah.
I mean, we now know that he was signing executive orders and didn't even know what he was signing.
Yep.
They're just putting these in front of him while he was eating his ice cream, and he was signing away. We would have lost the Republic.
Yes.
We would have lost the judiciary. The administrative state would have expanded beyond all measure, and the inner cities especially would have degraded and become a burning inferno.
And one more point. I believe the United States of America would have lost its sovereignty. Because the Biden administration was on the very verge of selling out control of health care to the World Health Organization.
Oh, yeah.
And by the way.
And interestingly enough.
Yes, within the last 12 hours, the Donald Trump administration says we're pulling out of the World Health Organization. It is absolutely insane. A lot of people don't know this. The amount of money, American taxpayers' money, to fund the World Health Organization, the Biden administration committed. We're talking billions of dollars to fund the World Health Organization.
And to, like you said, to cede control of the decision-making.
Yes.
Internally.
Yes.
To the World Health Organization.
World Health Organization was going to tell the United States how to handle the next pandemic.
Yes.
The World Health Organization was ready to mandate abortion, no restrictions.
Right.
This is what the Biden administration wanted. Very interesting. Along the same lines, Elise Stefanik, who is President Trump's nominee to be our ambassador to the United Nations. She was before a hearing this morning. And I was reading up a little bit on this. Do you know the Biden administration open the doors for the United States has been funding 1/3 of the budget of the United Nations under the Biden administration. $18 billion a year as of 2022. And what does the United Nations believe in? Globalism.
Right.
You know, this is why I say another 4 years of the Biden administration, I think the United States would be gone.
Yeah.
As a sovereign nation, it would be gone.
So, I would, at this point, just exhort our listeners, those of you who are Christian, to pray for President Trump and his administration, pray for his protection, pray for him and his family and his administration and their families. Pray for them. Pray for truth to prevail. Pray for a return to constitutional principles. Not that that's first and foremost. I'm going to get to what's most critical here in just a moment. But where liberty can thrive, where the gospel can be preached, where contrary ideas to this globalist cabal can be freely disseminated without censorship and without punishment. But most of all, pray for an awakening in this country. It's starting with the churches. The Bible says that judgment begins at the house of the Lord. So there may be some house cleaning that is coming. But pray for a fire to return to the pulpits of America, because as we have said constantly, and this is part of why AFR exists, part of why American Family Association exists, we have said constantly this is a spiritual war, folks. These were dark forces trying to subjugate humanity and provide a kind of a blueprint for a soft despotism and in some cases a hardcore tyrannical takeover of the world. This is a spiritual war, and we need this 4 years. The church needs to get busy being the church because the people are going to church. A lot of young people are turning away from the faith. We need God to flip the script, spiritually speaking, like he has done politically.
Yes.
Because that is, in the end, that is going to be the only way this republic will survive. So, amen. All right. I'm excited about some of the things. Chris, you're going to, at American Family News, going to keep us updated this afternoon on whatever the speech is.
It's going to be huge.
It's going to be huge.
Big, beautiful coverage.
And we're just winning. We're going to so much winning. Okay, folks, we're going to take a 5-minute break for news. When we come back, Steve Jordahl will continue with things that we didn't cover. We kind of did a little bit of preaching there, and Chris didn't get to all his news. But anyway, 5-minute break for news. We hope you'll rejoin us after the break.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family Radio.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio.
When you hear us mention the AFR app, you probably think about your smartphone. We do have apps for Apple and Android users, but it doesn't stop there. If you have an Alexa, we've got you covered. But wait, there's more. Sorry. There's also an AFR app for Roku or Apple TV. So many ways you can listen to your favorite show, podcast, or music. Find out more at afr.net/apps.
This is American Family Radio, a listener-supported ministry of the American Family Association.
American Family News, I'm Steve. A dangerous winter storm continues to sweep across the south with new blizzard warnings for portions of western Louisiana and southeast Texas. Kiana Lewis has the latest.
Where I am here in Houston, winter storm warnings will remain in place through the afternoon as accumulating snow continues to fall across the greater Houston metro and the suburban areas north and south of the I-10 corridor. Air travel is temporarily impossible as flight operations at both Houston airports will be suspended throughout the remainder of Tuesday. Roads and especially bridges and overpasses will likely become slick and hazardous. The winds are picking up through time and time with the wind gusts up to 25 miles per hour, and the weight of snow on tree limbs may also bring down power lines to those who have already been affected. 35,000 customers without power as of last check. Live in Houston, Kiana Lewis, Fox Weather.
The Senate Foreign Relations Committee holding a confirmation hearing for President Trump's nominee for ambassador to the UN, Congresswoman Elise Stefanik of New York. Congresswoman Stefanik telling the committee she will stand up for American interests and for peace if she's approved for the role.
If confirmed, I will work to ensure that our mission to the United Nations serves the interests of the American people and represents President Trump's America First, Peace Through Strength foreign policy.
The Senate Finance Committee convenes to consider the nomination of Scott Bessent for Treasury Secretary. Oregon Democrat Senator Ron Wyden details one reason why he opposes the nomination.
He has opted out of paying his fair share of his Medicare taxes. The IRS has gone to court twice to ban this particular scheme that Mr. Bessent is using.
President Trump's inauguration speech lasted roughly 30 minutes, which is the longest inauguration speech in modern history. Madison Allworth explains.
Reagan previously held the title with his 1985 speech. That was 2.6 thousand words. Interestingly, that was also the last time that the inauguration was held indoors. So maybe the cozy atmosphere allows our presidents to be more verbose. But now Trump holds that title with 2.9 thousand words. Trump beats out Reagan, Biden, and all the rest. Trump's inauguration speech in 2017 was actually the shortest in modern history. So yesterday's speech, it was double his 2017 speech, and it touched on, as we know, many different things: his win, immigration, the economy entering a golden age.
An Ohio think tank is urging lawmakers there to fulfill their own promise of universal school choice. More from Bronson Woodruff.
The Buckeye Institute is reminding lawmakers in Ohio what it said in the last operating budget when it allowed all families to obtain EdChoice scholarships. This, in effect, allowed for universal school choice statewide, according to a Buckeye Institute policy memo. Greg Lawson, research fellow with the Buckeye Institute.
We basically made school choice universally available to any family that wanted to take advantage of whatever option they wanted to do. In other words, we have what's called the EdChoice program, it's a scholarship program. It's gone through a number of different revisions over the last probably around 20 years or so.
He explained there is an income limit to getting the full scholarship.
This is the promise of school choice. This is an option to empower families, to make sure that they're able to get their students where they want to send their students and where students feel that they're going to get the best education.
Buckeye Institute explained the problem is there are obstacles in place making it difficult to exercise the freedom of choosing your child's school. These include funding. Buckeye says the General Assembly should include the appropriate DPIA, or Disadvantaged Pupil Impact Aid, in EdChoice scholarships. It says for many disadvantaged households, EdChoice awards alone don't give enough to cover education costs. Another obstacle is physical transportation. Buckeye Institute says despite a legal mandate for districts to transport or help pay for the transport of students to the chosen school, some districts still make it difficult. Some proposed solutions from Buckeye include resist any efforts to roll back EdChoice eligibility or scholarships, ease charter school access to unused district school buildings, and issue state report cards to improve information available to parents. I'm Bronson Woodruff.
U.S. stock indexes are drifting higher following a mostly encouraging batch of profit reports from big companies. The S&P 500 rose 0.5%. The Dow Jones Industrial Average added 337 points, and the NASDAQ Composite gained 0.1%. For American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh.
Streaming.afa.net has now become AFA Stream, and you can find it at stream.afa.net. You see, we removed the letters ing. Our experts have determined that eliminating those three keystrokes, multiplied over hundreds of thousands of AFA Stream visits, could reduce the national debt and maybe increase the gross domestic product. AFA Stream, formerly streaming.afa.net. Improvements to the economy are purely theoretical.
Today's Issues continues on AFR with your host, Ed Vitagliano.
And welcome back. Ed Vitagliano sitting in for Tim Wildman today. I'm joined in studio by Fred Jackson. And now Steve Paisley Jordahl joins us. Black shirt, paisley tie.
Yeah.
Nice jacket. That's a nice outfit. I like it.
Thank you.
Is that a Jerry Garcia tie?
It is not. It is not. But it is one of my favorites. Kind of it's got a lot of pretty colors.
Yeah.
On these.
That's good.
On the.
Nice outfit.
Thank you.
All right. All right, Steve-O.
All right. Hey, I just wanted to, before we get started too much, we got a weather report from one of our listeners.
Yeah.
A dear listener named Phyllis Cannon called from Mobile, Alabama. She listens to us regularly, and she says it's been snowing there since 8 a.m. They expect an inch an hour, somewhere until 8 or 9 tonight.
An inch an hour?
That's what she said.
What's her name again?
Phyllis Cannon.
Phyllis. So
Now,
Phyllis is maybe listening now.
I hope she is. Thank you for calling in. And
I've got a picture here of my granddaughter who lives across the bay from Mobile.
Oh, does she?
She's out playing in the snow.
There you go.
Kids love snow.
So Phyllis is blind, so she can't see the snow, but she went out and she could feel it, and you can hear snow the way it muffles the surroundings and everything. She heard a couple of birds fighting out what they were going to do. But then she says she thinks that what's happening with the storm, that this is God christening the Gulf of America.
Very good. To go.
That's what Phyllis has told us. So I'm not.
I like that.
Phyllis
Christening the Gulf of America.
Yeah.
First of all, let me just say, I thought this happens a lot, at least with me. I thought President Trump, at the time, President-elect Trump, was kidding about that, but he's not.
No, and we can actually. One of the things I want to do is talk about executive orders.
Yeah, let's go.
It's in the executive orders, renaming things, and we'll get into how that might happen.
Okay.
But let's start with this, though. One of the things that President Trump did at the signing ceremony at the Capital One Center last night is he signed a pardon for nearly every January 6th, he calls them hostages, prisoner. So they're supposed to be let out on the street. We talked a while ago, a couple of weeks ago, to a gentleman named Gary Haven, who was at the time, I think we mentioned this yesterday, he was flying his helicopter out to western North Carolina to help with the flood victims. Well, he has organized a welcoming party for all of the J6 prisoners as they're let out. Now, they are in dozens of prisons in dozens of states, many of them in prison far, far away from their actual homes.
Yes.
So he has what he has called ambassadors, just a lot of, I suppose, an ambassador for every prison. So it's a 40-some, was that, Fred? I don't have
He
the number.
said 70-something
70 prisons.
They were scattered around the country.
And 70 prisons. So he's got 70 ambassadors, 70-ish ambassadors. And for those that have to travel, he has organized private jets to take them in class to their homes, if they have homes, and because some of them lost homes and families.
So they lost homes. Some of them lost families through divorce. This is terrible.
It was. And we talked to him this morning in our store meeting. You mentioned a store meeting. And he himself is going to be on a tour today of different airports to pick these prisoners up. But that's one of the things that President Trump had promised, and one of the first things he delivered on.
Fred, this is a president who keeps his promises.
That's right.
And we have talked about this over the last 4 years. Sandy Rios has really led the fight for American Family Radio in coverage of the January 6th. In the vast majority of these cases seems like travesties of justice, where a lot of these individuals still have not been before a judge.
I know.
4 years later, I don't know how. Listen, I hope they sue the federal government. I don't like tax money coming out of our pockets and paying people. It's a waste of money, but that's what happens when the people running the government break the law or trample on constitutional rights. Somebody's got to pay to put these people's lives back together. So I am glad for – now, I have said and Tim has said that, those who smash windows or what have you, I know there's some disagreement about whether some of these were these FBI plants. I don't know that we'll ever get the full story on this.
Oh, I think you're going to come close with.
Okay, you think he will get to the bottom of it?
Yeah, I think with Kash Patel. That's his mission in life now.
So, what I'm trying to say is, if there are those in prison who were sentenced, if they went through the trial and then were found guilty for, breaking into the Capitol and smashing and doing whatever, okay, you should pay the price for breaking the law. I doubt 4 years in prison is justice.
Right.
Okay, especially since the leftists have no problem letting people out for heinous crimes. But anyway, I am happy to see that President Trump is keeping his promise. And like you said, good point. Maybe we will get to the bottom of some of this. There's got to be something illegal going on and conspiracy, and talk about it as a legal term, a conspiracy to break the law and trample on constitutional rights. Otherwise, why would Biden have issued pardons?
Well, and that's
some of these people.
Yeah, not only some of these people, but his very family members. So he did yesterday do 2 rounds of pardons as he was leaving office. The first round, he pardoned people that you might have heard of, like Anthony Fauci, the members of the J6 committee, including the Adam Kinzinger and the Wyoming.
Liz Cheney.
Liz Cheney, thank you. I'm sorry. I'm looking for my notes as we're talking here. The second round of pardons, and he did this like as the swearing-in ceremony was starting.
Yes.
His family members. He pardoned a preemptive pardon for his brother, and he threw them all in. And why did he throw them all in? Well, maybe they're all guilty of something. But it's another. If there are some that would have been found out absent this pardon, putting all the names out there kind of fogs that up a little bit.
Well, okay, let me just throw this in, and this is just my opinion. You guys can feel free to disagree.
I do.
Okay. It obviously looks bad. Adam Schiff, by the way, was also pardoned.
Yes.
Last minute. Okay. California, at the time, was California Congressman Adam Schiff. It doesn't necessarily mean that Biden's family members were guilty and thus the pardon protects them from prosecution. It could be, folks, I know some of you are going to scream at the radio. It could be that Joe Biden just did not want them, in his mind, being harassed by prosecutions. In other words, done dirty like the Biden administration did to Trump and people around him. That could be the reason why he pardoned. Or it could be that President Biden knows, that there were illegal things going on, that brothers, sisters, son, others had gotten money under the table. That could be also. So
a lot of people are asking how a man 50 years of government salary affords 4 homes and.
That's a legitimate question.
What do you mean? You mean Joe Biden could be the big guy?
Well,
I'm
just saying. I was sharing with Ed before we went on the air a little meme we saw of Joe Biden coming back to Delaware.
Well,
getting off the plane, and slipping on all his money.
I have a question though for Steve.
Sir. Yes.
Has Joe Biden always believed in preemptive pardons?
Well, as so it happens, he didn't always believe it. In fact, we're going to listen to him. I think, Brent, correct me if I'm wrong, because I didn't title these things. I think we're going to listen to cut 10. We're going to hear first Rachel Maddow, I think, talking about it. And then we're going to hear from the big man himself.
This is going back to what?
This is 2020.
Before Joe Biden became president.
Before Joe Biden became president. And thank you for setting this up. The rumor was that Donald Trump was going to issue preemptive pardons for his sons and his family members. Oh, well, that's just, you can't do that. Cut 10.
Have you ever heard of somebody getting a preemptive pardon who was innocent of all crime?
But no, here it's an effort not only to prospectively pardon people for things they have not yet been charged with and may never be charged with, but also it's the president's own family. It's people that have been covering up for the president in addition to his own family.
Does this concern you, all these preemptive pardons?
Well, it concerns me in terms of what kind of precedent it sets and how the rest of the world looks at us as a nation of laws and justice. In terms of the pardons, you're not going to see in our administration that kind of approach to pardons.
And the nose sure has grown.
Well, okay, to defend the man, he might not have remembered he said that.
Well, listen, it is going to be good not to for us not to have to make fun of Joe Biden's clear cognitive decline anymore. Well, maybe we'll maybe we'll have a few shots left to take, but this is the way the left has operated. It's certainly the way the media has operated. I can't tell you how many times on X I'll see a post from someone who's on the left raging against something Trump has said or done, and then what is underneath it is an earlier post where they were defending the left doing the very same thing. And again, we need to be clear. It's only right to say sometimes Republicans and conservatives can be hypocrites too. But that statement there from Joe Biden is a clear case of not only hypocrisy, but do as I say, not as I do.
So did you see another one of Joe Biden's parting gifts yesterday was unilaterally ratifying the Equal Rights Amendment to the U.S. Constitution?
I saw that. He said it was...
He said, now the law of the land.
Yes.
I declare it is now the law of the land.
And that is not true. No. That is not... The Equal Rights Amendment is not the 28th Amendment to the Constitution.
Yeah.
There's a time limit on those, and they failed to get it ratified. So.
It did. And I'm saying anything about the value of it. Yeah. He can't just unanimously decide that. There are a couple other executive orders I thought that were interesting. I know we've talked a little bit about renaming of certain, like we talked already about our weather reporter down in Mobile in the Gulf of America.
Phyllis.
Phyllis, thank you, Phyllis. And there's another, the mountain in Alaska, Mount McKinley, which was Denali, and now is back to Mount McKinley. And
that was Obama who did that.
Well,
right?
Obama changed it to
Denali.
And Trump changed it back to Mount McKinley.
He mentioned it in his inauguration.
He did.
Inaugural speech, didn't he?
I kept asking myself, well, how does he? Who does that? Who not like
who changes names?
Who's in charge of names?
The Interior Department.
Well,
right?
I didn't know this, but there is a U.S. board on geographic names. It's already established. It was put into existence in 1890. And basically what it does, its purpose is to maintain uniform geographic name usage throughout the federal government. So he is going to direct this board and appoint people to this board that will, as far as the federal government is concerned, now have us bordering on the Gulf of America and having the tallest mountain of the United States be Mount McKinley. Now, whether Rand McNally, if they do they do maps anymore? Whether Google Maps is going to go along and rename it, that I don't think he has any power over that. Although the way social media has been making friends with Donald Trump, it wouldn't surprise me if Google Maps.
Well, Fred, let me just say this. Now, of course, the inauguration was yesterday. Mm-hmm. So what I'm about to say is purely speculative. But if Trump finishes out his term, his administration, and J.D. Vance were to win election and then re-election, you could have 12 years of Trump/Vance, and that might be what it takes for these names to stick. Mm-hmm. After 12 years, people, kids in school and, U.S. maps, it's the Gulf of America, it's Mount McKinley, and maybe it does stick. But this is we talk about Donald Trump. He is a fascinating person. I would never have even thought of changing the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America, but he did. And again, I'm surprised that was serious about that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he's a wheeler dealer business guy.
Yeah.
He doesn't operate the way traditional politicians do. He's a deal maker, and he will use the strength of the United States to get a good deal for the United States. You know, what was interesting, he's talked about 25% tariffs for Canada.
Yeah.
And Canada is in a political upheaval all of its own. They're probably going to have an election this spring up there. Trudeau is announced he's resigning. But somebody was saying that yesterday at one of the inaugural events in Washington, the premier of Alberta, they call them premier instead of governors, they call them premiers. The premier of Alberta was at the inaugural. Now, what is the premier of Alberta, Canada, doing at the inaugural? She was invited to the inaugural celebration.
Governor of the 51st state.
Well, here's the reason. Alberta produces over 4 million barrels of oil a day for the United States. She wants to, the premier up there wants to increase that to 8 million. She's now a friend of Donald Trump.
Right.
So this is the way he operates.
Yes.
And he will use that leverage to get what he wants. There's all kinds of crazy talk going on about the new relationship between Canada and the United States. There was one guy, he's an entrepreneur, talking yesterday, could turn it into kind of a European common passport between the two countries. And even that would lead to no tariffs between the two countries.
But he starts off with 25% tariff to get their attention.
That's just a starting point in the negotiations.
Yeah.
It is going to be a wild ride.
It is. To your point earlier, Ed, it's taken us 16 years to get over President Obama.
Yeah.
So
no, that's these things have a long-lasting impact, and so we'll just wait and see. He is Make America Great Again. In his speech yesterday, talking about President Trump, his inaugural address, several times talking about this is going to start a new golden age for America, and it's the American century, all these kinds of ideas. He's a true believer in this, and he wants America and Americans to prosper. That's why he spoke directly in his speech yesterday to Black Americans, Hispanic Americans. He wants everyone included in the coming prosperity.
Very transactional, the man.
Yes.
And I want to, before we leave the EOS, there's one more executive order I wanted to highlight that nobody's talking about. But I find it fascinating. He signed the Promoting Beautiful Federal Civic Architecture executive order. And he says his agencies are to submit to him within 60 days recommendations to advance the policy that federal public buildings should be visually identifiable as civic buildings and respect regional, traditional, and classical architectural heritage in order to uplift and beautify public spaces and ennoble the United States and our system of self-government.
Well, Fred,
none of these box things anymore. He wants classical architecture.
He said, I don't remember exactly, this might have been prior to the election or after the election. I can't, in my mind, pinpoint this. But he did, I think he met with the mayor of D.C. and said, I want this city to be beautiful. I want it to be the envy of the world.
Yeah.
And he was talking about the crime and also the poverty there. I think President Trump understands. He's a builder, okay? He understands that architecture and not having graffiti on things and, slums don't inspire anyone. And so I think he is seeing a connection between beautifying. I'm guessing that's why he signed this. I would, if I was president, that wouldn't have been on my radar for the first 100 days, let alone the first day, what Steve's talking about. This could, like you said, this could get really interesting in terms of his approach to even inner cities like Washington, D.C.
Well, he is a builder.
Yeah,
I mean, literally, that's what we're talking about. He wants nice things.
Yeah.
And now, he's done that as a business person in New York. And now he wants to translate that into something national.
Yeah.
When he says he wants to make America beautiful again, he is really talking about buildings and all of that sort of thing. So it's and he understands too. He doesn't even have 4 years. He's got 2 years before the next election.
Yes, midterms.
He's got to accomplish some things, and there are going to be challenges for this president. It's interesting his intent, but Ukraine. Remember some of the things that he said during the election campaign. Within a few days after I'm elected, they're now talking. Well, we need to wait 100 days.
Yeah.
There are going to be some challenges for this president too.
Right.
That aren't going to happen tomorrow.
Right.
So the criticisms of what he's doing are going to start.
Yeah.
In the mainstream media and that sort of thing. So we're happy for the president right now, but he has said a lot of things that are going to be more challenging than what he can correct in an executive order.
Well, the lawsuits have already started.
Yeah, they have.
So this is, listen, there is a real resistance.
Oh, yes.
Within the administrative state to change anything, against any kind of change,
Yes.
And he's going to have to deal with it.
I want to go back to the naming thing, or the building things, not the naming thing, the beautiful buildings, because this is something that we talked about extensively in my seminary education, about how we, the buildings that we use to honor God.
Right.
Remember the cathedrals in Europe, soaring, inspiring, awe-inspiring buildings that just, how do they stand up? You didn't think that there could be something so beautiful.
Right.
And then in many churches here, we've kind of reverted to boxes, just and there is something to if you're going to worship an awe-inspiring God, to be in an awe-inspiring place. Yeah. It speaks to your theology, and in this case, it speaks to your patriotism.
Yeah.
So, and your view of the nation. But
in fact, I saw recently on social media, it was a young woman who had gone to Europe first time, and she was in a cathedral. I think she was outside when she was making this little video, but she was blown away by the cathedral.
If you've ever been,
she said, "How in the world did someone make something like this?" I don't know whether she'd never seen pictures. It's probably quite different to be right there to see it live, but there is something to that.
Hey, a couple just little quick headlines from our favorite publication, the Babylon Bee, before we go. The TikTok, there was a lot of talk about whether or not that was going to be here or not. Well, Zoomers who thought they might lose access to TikTok were frantically asking their grandparents how to use Facebook.
All right, so that's a Babylon Bee. You got me on that. I was thinking, wait, they did really?
Yeah.
Okay, so what? Well, you got another headline?
Yeah. Well, Vivek and Elon have asked Trump if they can make a blanket fort in the Lincoln bedroom.
Do what?
A blanket fort.
A blanket. A blanket fort. Those guys did become pretty close pals. So, all right. Well, folks, this is just day one. Actually, technically, yesterday wasn't a full day. So buckle up is all I can say. The next 4 years are going to be lit. Is that still a word? I don't know. Anyway, Tim Wildman should be back in the captain's chair tomorrow. More great programming directly ahead on American Family Radio. You've been listening to today's issues. Hope you will join us again tomorrow.